Welcome. Listen to this next Agile Vocalist blogcast.
Joshua Rubin Silverstein is an award-winning actor, comic, writer, beatboxer, and educator. This interview with him from December of 2020 focuses on his career as a beatboxer, which he began doing at the age of 5. Joshua's various performances and productions have received admiration from creative geniuses ranging from Norman Lear to Prince. He has collaborated with artists such as Slash from Guns N' Roses, poet Ursula Rucker, and improv legend Wayne Brady. Joshua has also dropped beats for Drop the Mic, a segment of The Late Show with James Corden on TNT, TBS. And now, here's my conversation with Joshua.
So my name is Joshua Rubin Silverstein. I have been a professional beatboxer for, I'm gonna say, over 20-something years. And really what that means is I've crossed the threshold from doing it at home in the shower to someone who actually gets paid to do it. And that really is the qualifier for professional. Like, if you get paid to do it, then you're a professional. Like, professional does not mean great, doesn't mean good. It just means someone has given you money to do it. There are a lot of beatboxers who are professional that are not very good. I happen to be very fortunate to be a good one, I think. At least my experiences have led me to believe so. So my story starts back when I was 5, and I'm an only child, and my parents were married at the time. Took me to see Bobby McFerrin in concert, and he has since then become my musical idol, and they took me to see him, and I was 5, and I had grown up listening to Don't Worry Be Happy and that whole album, and I didn't know that he was doing it by himself. I thought that this was music like anything else, which was recorded with a full band and other people. So, my parents didn't really hit me to the fact that this is one guy alone. And so when he walked out on stage with no shirt on, beating his chest and being percussive, I was like, wait a minute, this is just him? And so, I am an only child. So I spent a lot of time alone in my room. And the very first thing I ever wanted to be when I grew up was a doctor and a clown. And a doctor because of my health stuff, and so I was always in the hospital, and so I became very comfortable with doctors and the idea, I fantasized what that was like. And a clown because I loved comedy, and I loved cartoons, and I loved laughter, and so one of the things that I always did to be funny was I would mimic animation, and I would mimic cartoons, and I would pretend that I'm a cartoon character, and I would make the sound effects of the cartoons, and like watch a lot of Tom and Jerry and all the bangs and zaps and I was trying to make with my mouth. And so when I found out that Bobby McFerrin was doing stuff, it kind of blew my mind as to what was possible, and so I became very like sound effectsy kid, like just very interested in like what sounds could I create. It wasn't even music for me yet. It was just like, this is funny and fun, and so then when I was in elementary school and I was becoming more familiar with hip hop, the kids in my class would bang on desks and make beats, and kids would rap to them, and there was this one kid who would beatbox, and I kind of knew who Dougie Fresh was, but I wasn't really familiar with him enough to know that what he was doing was stuff that was made out of his mouth. So I saw this kid doing it, and I thought, oh, well, I kind of do that. And then by the time I got to junior high, and I was fully immersed in hip hop, another guy I knew beatboxed, and we would have these things called ciphers, which were, circles where everyone was standing in a circle and rapping, and there was one guy making a beat with his mouth. And I thought, okay, I want to do that. Because I wasn't good with my hands, and I wasn't like, drumming didn't come naturally to me, but I was percussive with my body. And so I began to mimic what I saw other guys do, but also I began to do what I thought by McFerrin was doing. So I was beatboxing, but also being vocally percussive at the same time, vocal percussion. And so by the time I got to high school, I was this guy who just did that. Like I was this guy who was beatboxing, and that was just the thing that I did. And so I had friends that knew, and so whenever there was like a rapper who wanted a beat, they would get me. And this is high school lunch, and I was, and that was what I did. And one of the things that kind of I became known for was I was the only guy who could do it for a long time. Like a lot of these guys would do it and they'd get tired around a breath, but I could sustain my breath and go for like a half an hour, go for a full hour nonstop. And so guys would be like, "Oh my God, the beat's not stopping."
And this is where? Is this LA area?
This is LA. Like all this is in LA. So I'm at Hamilton High School.
Okay.
Alexander Hamilton. This is like the early '90s, mid '90s, and I want to be an actor. I want to do theater, but my drama teacher is like, nah. And one of the parts of the story that I don't talk about a lot is at this like between junior high and high school, I became really insecure, and all I wanted to be was cool. And so I was trying to emulate anything I thought was cool, for the purpose of being accepted and by my peers. And so at the same time, I developed a speech impediment. And so what ends up happening is, this is strange. So what ends up happening is, so ninth grade, I'm in theater, and I'm insecure, and I'm stuttering, and I'm mumbling, and so my theater teacher doesn't see that I love this, and thinks that I don't want to do it, but really I'm just insecure. And so he discourages me. So I get really tongue tied even more than I already am at the time, because now I'm feeling down on myself that I can't do what I love doing, which is acting and performing. And so beatboxing becomes the one thing that I can do really well in front of an audience that doesn't require me to speak. And so I'm getting all the attention that I want as a performer without having the anxiety of saying lines. So I get really good at it. And all I want to do is perform. And so I'm nursing it, right? And so even though like I'm pursuing visual art and animation as a career, I'm also doing this beatboxing stuff hardcore, and I'm doing it in church shows at my spiritual center at Agape. I'm doing it for school productions. Like I'm becoming the beatboxer within my community. Norman Lear has discovered a copy of the Declaration of Independence, um, in a painting he's purchased at an auction. So, randomly stumbles upon the actual document, signed and everything. And at this time, you've got Def Poetry Jam, and so I had been beatboxing with musicians,
Right.
and then poets who had seen me were asking me to accompany them with their poems. So I became a member of the spoken word art scene in LA as a beatboxer backing up other poets. And these poets didn't know that I wrote. And I was still battling my speech stuff. So I wasn't reading my poems out loud,
Ah.
to these people. So I was just writing stuff and like kind of hoarding it. And so Norman Lear looks at the copy of the Independence, whatever, and he's like, this document was designed to be read out loud. I should have poets perform this document as part of this like voter registration tour. So he starts this tour, and he goes on a nationwide scout looking for poets, and he stumbles upon me at this show performing with a friend of mine named Bridget Gray, who's this amazing female poet. And he's like, "What is this beatboxing thing? I didn't know this was a thing. And do any other people do this? What this guy's doing?" So he does a nationwide scout for beatboxers, brings me in and some other guys, and kick them out. Like I immediately outshine them. And so I win this tour. And so all of a sudden, all these beatboxers are like, "Who's this Joshua Silverstein guy?" And so then you got people like Dougie Fresh also knows who I am, right? And like Rozelle, who's a beatboxer, like they begin to hear my name. And so all of a sudden, I become familiar, a name that's familiarized with other beatbox greats. And I do this tour with Norman Lear, and I'm part of this tour for 3 years. And so during that time, I become like LA's most sought after beatboxer, but I also become known amongst poets. And so now nationwide, poets now know who I am because I got this tour that they all wanted to be a part of, and we do that for 3 years, and then Bush wins, and we're all like but which was funny because he won and it was a higher voter turnout, so we were like, did we ruin this elect? We blame ourselves.
What I hear in your story is a lot of someone who's moved through his own hesitations and is now helping other people with their issues, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Curious, can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, so I remember, it's my first teaching gig, and I'm about 19 years old, and I'm one of the kids that I'm working with is this kid named Christopher, and Christopher is this kid who will just swear like he's about I want to say like nine or 10.
Yeah.
And he's got a mouth. And he obviously learned it from his parents or whatever. And he's got a temper. And when he thinks things are unfair or he feels, kids are messing with him or he's not getting his way, he just starts cursing people out. And I think it's funny, but it's not because, he's obviously not supposed to be using language like that, and it makes other kids cry, and he's really violent with his language. So, you know, he's one of those kids who we talk to his parents. You go, "Hey, Chris is this problem," and his parents are like, "Oh my God, oh no," and then nothing changes. And I finally go, and he's got a sister who's great. Like his sister is the polar opposite. Like she's sweet, she's a good student. Like clearly, Chris has got something going on. And and I go, "You need an outlet. Like you need somewhere to release this frustration." And so I buy him a journal, and I go, "Look, man, whenever you want to say these terrible things, just write it down. And this is just for you. This isn't for me. This isn't for your parents. This is just your place to be you, where you feel better. And so you're not cursing out other kids. You're not getting in trouble." And he goes, "Okay." And for a month, he's great. Like he's not cursing anybody out. He's not getting in fights. Like he's doing his homework. Like he's like exemplary for like a good month. And so then what happens is the dad finds the journal like under his bed. And then he's like, "What is this?" And it's filled with like the worst stuff you've ever imagined a kid could say. And then he was like, "Well, Mr. Joshua told me to do this." And it's like, no, I didn't say write a book of swear words, but I was like, "Here." And so the dad comes to me with my boss, and he's like, "What is this? What did you do?" And I'm like, "Your son had a problem. I tried to fix it. He was great for this month that he was filling this book out, and I got in trouble." And because you know the way it looked was that I was giving him permission to be this person, but really I was trying to find an outlet for it. And so I got in trouble, and I felt awful about it. And I was like, man, like the thing I wanted to do worked, and I realized that like people people need that. People, we're not a society that really thrives on mental health issues. We're really stunted as a species because we don't know how to communicate our feelings in a way that is understood, and we don't know how to relate all the time either. And so we walk through this life experiencing things, experiencing shame, picking up traumas, and we never deal with them. And so this kid was experiencing something that he had no outlet for at all, because where can you go be like that, right? Everyone's gonna say don't do it, and so you just suppress it. And so I gave him a book where he got to write in his own way who he wanted to be, and as a result, he showed up differently. And I just have always taken that as we writing yourself on page
Yeah.
is so cathartic and so releasing. And then when I began to share my own work, I also learned that, you know, sometimes the work we write is only cathartic. It's not about the other person. And so I was writing things that I thought was brilliant, but I hadn't shared it. And then when I read it out loud, I would cry and I'd go, oh, well, this isn't really well written. This is just emotion. And so for me as a teacher, I became more interested in the art of expression versus the art of creation. And I think for me, on top of the fact that I feel that that's a need, that we just need a place to be creative without fear of what it sounds like, and just be able to feel heard, and feel like it's okay to be expressive. I also feel like I'm trying to be the teacher that I didn't get as a kid, which is giving people permission to be themselves. And so
Nice.
so part of my writing technique as an instructor is just like, who are you and how do I get you to feel like it's okay to be you, whatever that is, wherever that is. And so a lot of my journey has been about just wanting to feel safe, and just wanting to feel safe in who I am, and learning how to accept where I am and who I am.
So
And
let's talk about healing the planet a little bit with one of the areas of the planet that I have spent a lot of time in my life is uh, corporate America of all sizes and shapes, organizations, nonprofit organizations.
Mhm.
Can you talk about any overlap or even any like stories where people from this? I find it's a largely very divided world, completely unaware of the arts, right? I mean, one of the things that I see, especially in our times, our lifetime, is America shows up when there's a crisis.
Mhm.
So the whole, tipping point, I call it, the racial pandemic of the last 400 years that's really started to culminate this year.
Mhm.
We're all of a sudden showing up with money and, words and maybe actions, right?
Maybe.
uh, we hope, right? And so for me, it's really been, I've loved watching your journey with the Silverstein show and current events and politics.
Yeah.
Can you tell me just about that show, and also about kind of, where do you think you've touched people who are, maybe they don't, they go to movies, maybe they go to a play or a concert, but that's about all they do with the arts, and they don't see the arts as a place to heal.
Well, so
Yeah.
I'll tie this into like the beatboxing thing, right? Because like I'm someone, I was just telling this story today actually about how, so when I became a famous beatboxer, quote unquote, and and I started taking it seriously. I was young, and so one of the things that young people do is there's this like, I gotta be the best, and so and there was that, like, the ego takes a hold of it, like you're good at anything, and people start giving you any sort of like rewards for it, then you're like, okay, this, I'm onto something here, and so the ego was like, mine, best beatboxer in the world, and I got invited to um, the National Beatbox Convention, and the guy that used to put this stuff on, his name was Kid Lucky, and he was a friend of mine. He passed away this year, and his whole thing, he was beatboxing, like, that was it for him. It was no other thing. He would talk about how beatboxing was the hidden link between humans and dolphins. Like, he was that guy. He was like, beatboxing is this thing, and we were like, all right, man, sure, whatever you want, it's dolphins. And so he had this national convention, and he flew me up from LA to New York, And there was and he flew up the people that were like worldwide. So people from Europe, people from China, and it was the people who were like doing it for real, like putting it on the map. And so I get there, and there's about 60 of us, and and there's 60 of us total at the convention, and then like the audience, whatever, who just kind of comes in and watches, and then a few of us are doing like classes or talks or whatever, and like there are beatboxers who are like, what it's like to beatbox in commercials, or all kinds of stuff, and so for the 60, there's a showcase, right, and it's the opening night, and you get there and you can sign up where you want to go. So from 1 to 60, where do you want to go? And people putting their name up second or first or third. And I was like, I'm going 60th. And that was my thought. I was like, I'm going to let everyone embarrass themselves. And then 60s when the show starts. Now, a couple things that I hadn't thought of, which is one, what time does 60 mean? And 60 meant 4 in the morning and at the Bowery Poetry Club. And number two, like, who are these guys who are gonna go before me? And so by the time we got to like 40, I could care less about beatboxing. I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. I saw 40 people do things that I hadn't imagined I could be done. I saw people doing stuff that I thought I was the only one doing, that they were doing better than me, and I was like, I'm last. Like, who's gonna want to see me after any of these people? And um, so we get to me, and there's like maybe 20 people in this club now, and they've seen people beatbox out of their asshole. Like, I got nothing here, like I pull up my harmonica and whatever, and I do whatever I can. And I don't even care at this point. Like, I just want to go home tired. And I don't even know what I did. I'm sure it was whatever. But it became apparent to me that someone's always going to be better than me. Like, someone's going to always, and that not necessarily from my own perspective, but from someone else's perspective. Like, someone's gonna either want it more or be doing it more often. And then, you got kids who are coming up with music being different, and the way they're internalizing sound is different than my old butt was. And so I was like, I can't compete with these 13-year-olds who are like listening to EDM all day and doing these super fast beats. Like, I'm old school. So I became very clear that I may not be the best, but the only thing I can do is be the best version of myself. So I became very interested in, like, okay, what is my lane, and what is it that I do as an
Yeah.
actor? So I got all these talents. I'm a writer, I'm an actor, I'm a performer, I'm a beatboxer, and like, what am I doing with it? Like, I don't want to stand on stage and just do a beat for 10 minutes. Like, that's not fun anymore. So what do I do? So all of a sudden I became very interested in storytelling, and I began to kind of like combine everything. And so, my brand became whatever the best version of the story is. So however, so if I want to tell a story about, um, my first girlfriend, maybe it's a poem, maybe it's a scene, maybe it's all through sound and beatboxing. Like, for me, it became clear that I wasn't interested in the specific skill. I only was interested in how can I tell the best story. So what I found in regards to the Silverstein show, and it the intention was, how do because originally it was just myself, and Cynthia was kind of behind the scenes, and I was like, no, she's smart, I want her to speak. But it was, how do I talk about stuff from my own that's worldly, but through my own experience and through my own perspective, because I'm still what people would consider middle class, right? And like last of a dying breed. And so one of the things that, like Trevor Noah, who I think has gotten a lot better, it is he's great, but he's not in it because he's got affluence and he's got access. And so he's talking about it and he's saying a lot of smart things, and he's being really clever, and he's come, he came from apartheid, and so like he's got a very clear perspective, but currently he's not living in it. Like he's kind of observing, and so Cynthia and I are in it. Like we are walking through the need for unemployment. We are artists. We are walking through friends that need homes. We are walking through like food shortages and like the fear of, oh my god, everyone went crazy and didn't get and got all the TP. We don't have any toilet paper. Like we walked through all of that, and so we were like, we're not hearing people talk about it from living in it,
Right.
and so we were like, how can we talk about that, but also make it digestible? And so one of the things that I think comedy does is comedy makes things more comfortable to take in,
Right.
because you're laughing and then you're swallowing it easier and then you're breathing also. And there was a need for me to use whatever this is that I am to talk about stuff that was important to me, and create the space to go, hey, we need to have a conversation about this. It's important. I don't want to say don't laugh, and I want to make it interesting. So that all those muscles, I think, I was using originally when we started the show was the need for laughter, the silliness, the lightheartedness, but also go like, here's some stuff that's really important and serious that may not be funny, but we should talk about too. But I want you to be in the room with me first. When people think about people who are multi-ethnic or multiracial or however they identify, they always think traumatic experiences, and like I didn't grow up with that. Like my parents, my mother's black, my dad's white and Jewish, and they were very clear about who I was as a kid. So I grew up without any sort of identity issues in regards to my race. Again, I wanted to be cool, so I was just trying to be someone else other than who I was, and it never mattered. Like for me, it was like, when I was a kid, Vanilla Ice was cool, so I wanted to be Vanilla Ice. And then when I got older, it was Hammer, so I wanted to be Hammer. And it was like, both are not cool with people at all, and anyway, at all at any point in time. But I wanted to be cool regardless of what the race was, and so I never associated culture with coolness. So I never had like a who am I thing in regards to that, and so people don't get to hear those stories. Um, and my grandparents were atheist Jews, and so the way they celebrated Hanukkah was sans any prayer, and so I grew up not knowing there were prayers for Hanukkah, and not until I met Cynthia, who converted to Judaism before she met me, and so Ami, our son, who's now 12, like he grew up in shul and he loves it. And so he knows the prayers. So now we do the prayers for Hanukkah because our son wants to, not because I want to. And so we've combined traditions, which is, we like the Hanukkah, and we say one thing we're grateful for each night. And that's how I grew up doing it. And so he'll do the prayer. I like the Shumash, and then we'll say what we're grateful for. But these stories of intersectionality and culture are not told a lot, and they're not told, including the Jewish experience, which is very vast in its experiences. And so, as someone again who seeks to create content that creates conversation, part of that is identifying my experience as part of the Jewish narrative, which may not fit in people's sphere of what that narrative looks like. And so I try to like undo that the same way that I do with being a black person, which is the way that I identify as a black man may not be what people assume black is. And so I try to open that up as well, because the strange thing about us as people is that culture is ever evolving and unfolding. So whenever we try to like pinpoint it and condense it, we actually eliminate the expression of it, because you're adding to it. You're making it more than it is versus singling it down to something very minuscule and finite. Um,
All right. So Josh is gonna do a little improv here. He's going to beatbox a soundscape for 2021 that is his take on culture, politics, and where our world is headed.
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I don't know.
My applause. I want to be respectful of your time. What you got? Any closing things you want to add?
No, I mean, it's, one of the things that I think I got real hip to years ago about anything in regards to performance and sound is like it's all vibration, right? Like that's why it touches us,
Right.
and I like this. I got this like lower resonant voice that I think people respond to a certain way, and so I try to be responsible with that. People walk away with that sound, and so I think for me, the vibration's got to mean something. It's got to mean something bigger than myself. Even if it's about myself, it's got to be bigger than me. And so yeah, I think that's why it hits us though, because we all respond to vibration. Even people who are deaf respond to it, like they feel it. I got a friend who who can't hear low tones, and so she can only hear high tones. And so I had her. She would hear me beatbox, and she didn't know what I was doing. She was like, "Why are you just making little click noises?" And I was like, "Oh, you can't hear the bass." And so I had her put her hand on the speaker, and she went, "Oh my god!" So like, I don't know. We all respond to it somehow, and you sit in a theater, and you've got this audience with you, and you got a microphone in your hand. It's like you got a weapon. It's a weapon in your hand. What are you going to use it for? I don't know. That's kind of my thing. Even at Kaz, it's like all that time on stage, and it's very sacred to me. It's very special. Even if I'm doing goofy, silly things, it's still very special. It all means something. Um, it all matters. What are you gonna do with it? I don't know. I get really. I got a friend who's a poet, and he's gotten really popular, and he got to do this show and at this beautiful theater, and 600 people showed up, and I was like, I can't wait to see what he's gonna do. And he just didn't use that space for much. He just kind of sat there, and he told people what they wanted to hear, and I was like, oh man, go out there and break your neck. I don't know, like if you're gonna use that space, you got to bear something. Like leave something on that stage that does something. And I don't know. I just it's got to mean something. It's got to be magical and transformative and reveal something somehow. I don't know.
I like it. That's beautiful. Use
Yeah.
your voice for something. That's what I'm trying to do, and
Yeah.
I'm so interested in what you do. So
Thank you.
That was inspiring. Be sure to listen again soon.